Hydra by Happy Little Misery. Read by Pummel Knight. Chapter 1. The Name. Part 1. Dim grey light illuminated the Greyhorn. The sun never fully appeared over the town, always hiding behind the thick grey clouds, even in the midst of summer. The townsfolk were grey as the skies above them, and never cared about much beyond their everyday struggles. Further from the town, 4 people and a child gathered at a slums cemetery. It was a parcel separated from the nearby fields only by a few stakes. Only the nameless were buried here. A priest, dressed in ornate clerical robes, was chanting to the souls of the dead. In the background, soft sobbing could be heard. Suddenly, he became aware of something tugging at his robe. Turning his hand, he saw a small, malnourished hand of a little girl weakly clutching his robe. He stopped the rites, sighing as he stopped to turn around and address the child. Yes, the priest looked at the child. His eyes affixed to her tattered clothes. He tried to grab her hand, to pull her closer, but she stumbled back, pulling her hands back underneath her rags. The priest looked at the child inquisitively. "What is it, Anenome?" the priest asked softly. "Name." Anenome struggled to say that word, her voice breaking in between the syllables. "Name?" the priest responded, surprised by the child. The girl was born 7 winters ago, and her mother had long since lost hope she would ever talk. When Anenome's father died in the Holy Wars, it proved too much for her mother to bear. Left alone to take care of the disabled child, and without friends or family to support her, she raised a hand on herself. Thus, Anenome was left in the care of her aunt, a middle-aged woman named Karna. "What is it, dear?" Karna, Anenome's aunt, asked, surprised by the mute child. She pulled Anenome closer to her, grabbing her tightly. Village priests told her Anenome was cursed by the black rot, and that she would never develop, but the child just uttered the word name. Was it merely a random whimper, a random cry at the sight of her dead mother? Mum, name," Anenome said, this time louder. "Oh, dearest." Karna covered Anenome's eyes as 2 goatsmen threw a handful of dirt over a corpse. "Let her watch, woman." The priest reprimanded Karna harshly, to which she responded only by drawing Anenome closer to her. The priest sighed and stroked his eyebrows in resignation. He was a village priest for more than 20 years now, but he still could not understand why nobody trusted him. "It is good for her development, and she deserves to say a final goodbye," the priest said, this time more mildly. He was sure he had overheard words from the child. It was not unheard of for someone to recover from the black rot, but never when the disease devoured the mind. His mind raced as he looked at Karna questioningly. As their gaze met, Karna took a step back. The priest, going by the clerical name of Angelo Fortis, was known as a ruthless man. This was the worst possible time for Anenome to speak. He might even think she was a witch. Not wanting to get the priest's bad side and afraid that he might go back on his offer to let the rites for free, Karna let go of Anenome. The child approached the rotting wooden plank, buried in the dirt. The grave was unmarked. Karna lacked money for such a luxury. "Name. Mummy's name. Missing." Anenome scratched at the wood as if it was going to do anything. By the next storm it would be indistinguishable from any other grave. "By the High Father, is this a miracle?" Angelo uttered, this time hearing words louder and clearer. "Goatkins, what are you waiting for? Bring a tombstone from the undertaker." The two goatmen dropped what they were doing, leaving the body half buried. One of them removed the brown hood that covered his face.
"Well, Father Angelo, what about the 3 silver pieces?"
the taller goatkin asked, cocking his goat-like head disapprovingly at Karna, as if she had something to do with his rash decision. Karna took a step back once more, but Father Angelo was having none of it.
"Are you challenging the will of the divine, Veritrax?"
He emphasized the word divine, dragging it out like a child who was still learning to talk.
No, sir.
The two goatkins ran off like they were being chased by wild wolves. They had felt the wrath of Father Angelo's whip far too many times to consider disobeying him.
"There we go, Ananome."
Father Angelo raised up the little girl, his face switching from a demonic grimace into that of a serene saint.
"Now, let me tell you a little story. Do you know why we have names?"
"No," Ananome replied timidly, raising her hand towards her aunt, only for her aunt to shake her head at her.
"Well, we have names to know how to call each other, to talk to each other, and to separate ourselves from others. And every single name is special, Ananome. Each name guides our actions and defines us. My name means angel, obviously, really, but for others, that is not always the case. Your name means wind's daughter. It is quite possible that the Wind Father has blessed you as well."
"What? Mommy's name?"
Ananome smiled at Father Angelo, pulling at his beard.
"Her name was..."
Father Angelo turned to Karna, who quickly realized that the man didn't even remember the name of the person he was holding the rights for.
"Hydra,"
Karna said, looking at the ground. Father Angelo furrowed his brows. The name sounded just like the word Hydra. Not that a mere peasant girl would be educated enough to know that.
"An unusual name. Hydra. Where does it stem from?"
he asked, dropping Ananome on the ground.
"We came from the north."
"Interesting."
But his voice showed no interest. The wind howled as if it were the cries of the dead themselves. The smell of rot filled the air.
"Karna, take the child back to your house. I will finish the rites on my own. This is not the place for the blessed ones."
Chapter 1, Part 2.
"Here it is. We paid for it from my own pockets,"
the shorter goatkin said, having finally finished burying the stone plate into the fresh grave dirt.
"Excellent work. The High Fathers will pay you for your virtue."
Father Angelo smiled at the goatkin. If it were up to him, he would have cut off a finger or two for the sin of avarice. Hadn't the Pontifex Maximus reprimanded him far too many times for the use of such methods? He missed the days when he was a part of the Crusades and Inquisitions. But, alas, everybody must carry their own burden. It was almost 5 years since the Crusades ended, and for his sin of disobedience, Angelo was banished to serve in the Great Horn. The town was terribly boring, holding no economic, political, or geographic significance, and as dull and bland as it was grey. On some days, Angelo wondered if Pontifex Maximus wanted to tell him something by sending him to a place where the sun never pierced the clouds. His Holiness was always keen on allegories, but Angelo lacked the will to ponder it. Ah! He let out a sigh of annoyance before turning to the goatkins. They were just leaning limply on their shovels, inspecting him with those rectangular irises.
What are you waiting for? Get on with it, or she will be surfacing out of the shallow grave the moment the first rain hits.
But, sir, you didn't tell us what name to engrave on the tombstone.
The taller one replied, picking up the stonemason's tools from the ground. They were planning to save themselves a few coins by doing it half-assed job themselves. Angelo couldn't blame them. Ever since the Crimson Esnaf started to trade with the Blackwater Merchants Guild, the prices were steadily increasing all over the continent.
Ah, yes. Just inscribe Hydra,
he said, slowly lifting his gaze from the partially buried corpse. There was something wrong with the way they asked him. They must have heard him before.
Did he have a family name?
The shorter one asked, continuing to throw dirt as his brother reluctantly stood by his side.
No, her husband died in the war. She holds no other names.
It was at that moment that Angelo realized why the two Goatkins were asking him that.
Don't you dare misspell it! I know what you two are up to. That name is not an ill omen. It just resembles the word Hydra because she is from the far north.
He raised his voice for the first time in months. But the first Goatkin dropped the shovel.
Further!
And the second one dropped his tools.
Silence! I raised you two like you were my own flesh and blood. Need I remind you how I lost my hand?
Angelo removed his silken gloves from his hands, revealing a blackened, shriveled right hand. As if on command, both Goatkins kneeled onto the ground.
Is this how you repay me? By being disobedient children?
He took a small silvery whip from his belt. As it unrolled on the ground, it revealed dozens of small silvery spikes all along its surface. And, as if on cue, both Goatkins lifted their robes up to reveal thoroughly scarred backs.
You were abandoned by your parents in the winter, and I took you in when the entire village wanted you to burn at the stake because your mother was a pagan witch.
He started relentlessly flaying the two Goatkins, each hit resonating more than the last.
I was the only one willing to break the cursed seal. If I didn't, it would have consumed both of you to summon a demon.
Forgive us, Father, and grant us penance. Bless our souls and grant our hearts.
After what seemed like ages, Angelo finally retired his spiked whip, leaving the two Goatkins bathed in their own pieces of fur, flesh and blood.
I want you to finish this in half an hour, and then you will be back for the evening sermon and confession to Brother Hale. Am I clear?
Yes, Father.
They both answered obediently, head still looking down onto the ground.
Good children, I forgive you.
He kneeled down, hugging their glossy eyes, then turned and left. Had someone seen what he did, they would have surely thought of him as a cruel and a sadist. But that couldn't have been further from the truth. After all, Angelo had to endure the same punishment they did, but twice as hard. Such was his oath, despite no one ever even knowing about it. As he looked at his blood-soaked whip, he could not help but whisper silently to himself,
Guess I have to stop by and buy some healing salves for them.
A lone tear dropped from his cheek onto the ground. Chapter 1, Part 3. The garbled voice uttered, looking at the place it crawled out from hours ago. It was born blind, but now it could see the whole disgusting world with perfect clarity that awakens pure hatred. But something was amiss. How did it know to read that word? How did it know how to speak? It couldn't speak when it was born, but it did have thoughts and emotions. Perhaps for the first time in its agonizing existence, there was something beyond the warmth of life troubling it.
What am I?
It screamed, its voice akin to croaking. It wasn't human, it wasn't even a beast. It was a monster. Not that it understood how it knew what a human, a monster, or a beast was. It just knew. It was holding pure information without any memory, opinion, or emotion attached to that information. It looked around itself. It was surrounded by the gravestones with names engraved into them. Mary Abigail, Jer Houndswhistle, Mort, Swindle Meingerber, Nestle, and finally it saw the name Hydra from the place it crawled out from once more. It knew that the things it was reading were names, but not why that were names, nor could it think of a name for its own. Why was that? It felt the desire to find out. Somehow it felt wronged by the world. Why did it lack a name? Why was it nameless, when even the dead had names? It couldn't think of a name for itself, but it did have an idea. But it didn't sound natural. It sounded abhorrent, just like its entire existence. It moaned and growled until it perfected the name. It felt difficulty pronouncing the words. It knew how they sounded, but not how to speak them. The name sounded very familiar to it, almost natural after a few tries. It finally pronounced it perfectly. Satisfied with finally having a name, it slithered into the night. It sent so many more living things calling to it. It wanted to kill.